Hello everyone, this is Mrs. Nguyen. In this video, I will be explaining in more details about your research paper. Okay, if you look at the screen here, I am in our Blackboard course, and I am in module 3 because your research paper information and all of the materials pertaining to that assignment is located in module 3, and as I've stated in my course announcement, the research paper is a multi-stage process that requires a lot of time and effort. So it's something that you really have to sit down and plan and plan and outline in terms of what needs to be done and when, in order for you to be able to perform the project as you are expected to. Let me look at the calendar here. The research paper is due toward the end of the semester, and at this point in the project, you should have already read all of the information for it, and you should have given it some thought in terms of which direction you are going to take, what topic you're going to choose, and you should also have an idea about the research method that you're going to use, because research is heavily emphasized for this paper. So your ability to research, cite, and document correctly following MLA guidelines are very, very important, and it's going to make up a big chunk of the essay's evaluation. Okay, so make sure that you understand that. Alright, so as I said, I have the screen opened up to module 3 in our Blackboard course. And you'll see that for the research paper, you have quite a few options to choose from. As a matter of fact, you have 3 options. You need to go through all 3 options carefully, and you need to decide which kind of research paper you're going to write. Is it going to be the research number 1, 2, or 3? You only have to pick one. But regardless of what you pick, let's go back up here and let's look at the general guidelines for course compositions. You see that the research paper is said to be at least 1,500 words minimum, okay? And it must also follow all of the general guidelines that you've been following throughout the semester for all of your other essays as well. So you guys need to revisit this page each time we start working in a different module, okay? So let me go back. So let's go over research paper option number 1 to see what you're doing for this kind of paper if this is what you choose. Alright, so you are going to adapt your course. So if you're one of these students who have been writing on the same topic for your cause and effect essay and your persuasive essay, but but of course for each of those 2 essays you approach your topic or your issue from a different angle, and you write about your issue in a completely different rhetorical mode, right? But if you've been pretty much examining the same issue for your cause and effect essay and the persuasive essay, this option may be the right one for you, because this option allows you, this option asks that for the research paper you will you use the same issue, you examine the same issue that for your cause and effect and persuasive essay, but you are going to look at it in this way, okay? You're going to adapt your cause and effect essay and your persuasive essay to create a solidly argued research paper that examines your chosen controversy or issue, and in your research paper you will give the following information: a historic overview of your topic, of your controversy, and a brief explanation of 2 or 3 reasons or current reasons for why your issue or your controversy continue to be controversial today, or continue controversial in nature to today. So in order to satisfy this first criteria, this historic overview, of course you're going to have to perform background information or historic a research of the history of your issue. Okay, and then of course you're going to also look at the current literature that discuss your controversial topic and that provide and excuse me. Okay. You're also going to examine and read about the current literature about your issue in order to be able to offer or to be able to explain in your research paper 2 or 3 reasons for why your issue continue to be controversial today. You're also going to develop a well-rounded and logical argument in favor of one of the reasons that you've given to explain why your controversial issue or your issue or topic continues to be controversial to this date. Okay, your research paper overall will cite 7 to 10 sources. Okay, minimum is 7, maximum is 10. Do not go under, do not have fewer than 7 sources, but do not exceed 10 sources as well. Okay, so an example thesis for your research paper is science has continued to provide proof, blah blah blah. Okay, so this follows in the same kind of this follows the same topic that the cause and effect in the persuasive essays follow as an example. All right, so as with all compositions that you will be writing or have written for this course, regardless of what rhetorical mode it is or what type of composition it is, you have to have a thesis statement. And this is something that I've emphasized over and over again, either in my course announcements or in my specific comments to your individual essays. Okay, so the research paper also requires a thesis statement at the end of your introductory paragraph. So please keep that in mind. All right, so that's option number 1, and like I said, this option would work for those of you who have been examining the same topic for your cause-effect essay and your persuasive essay. This option might work for you, and if you choose this, you will have begun with some prior knowledge already, and that prior knowledge may have come from your research for your previous essays of the cause and effect essay and the persuasive essay. So that for this research paper, all you have to do is think about well, what makes it continue to be controversial to this date, and what is the historic overview, and what historic overview about your issue or topic can you provide your reader to give them a sense of its beginning, why it was deemed controversial in its early development, and why does it continue to be viewed as controversial today, and all of that thing. And of course, do not forget that you also have to make an argument, right? As this second criterion states here. After you provide 2 or 3 explanations or 2 or 3 reasons for why it's still controversial today, you have to argue in favor of one of those reasons. You have to promote one of those reasons as perhaps the most significant reasons contributing to its continued state of controversial. Okay, of controversy, excuse me. All right, so that's option number 1. let's look at option number 2. All right, well, actually, I'm sorry. Let me go back to option number 1 and discuss how 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 you might want to structure your research paper if you're going with this option. Of course, in your introduction, for this option, for this kind of research paper would be lengthy, and and I expect for this criterion of of the historic overview and 2 or 3 reasons explaining why it's still why your issue is still controversial to be given in the introduction. All right, so your introduction is going to be lengthy, so give your historic overview and the 2 or 3 reasons excuse me, and the 2 or 3 reasons in your introductory paragraph, and you're going to end and you're going to end your introduction with a thesis statement, that will argue, right, that will express which of the reasons is the most important one according to your informed view, or and after that, in the body of your research paper, you will back up, and you will further develop and support the reasons that you provided in your introduction for its continued controversial state. Okay, so let's say if you give 3 reasons explaining why your topic continues to be controversial today, then the next 3 body paragraphs of your research paper will develop and support these 3 reasons. So after the introduction, your first body paragraph will explain, develop, and support the first reasons, right? So the first reason you said that so and so is still controversial today for the reasons that blah blah, and you're going to provide minor supporting details, specific supporting details, to clearly illustrate to your reader why, according to this reason, that it is still controversial today. And your next body paragraph will explain the next reason that you provided in your introduction, and you're going to draw it out. The third body paragraph, going to explain the other reason, the third reason, and then after that, and once you've developed and supported all the reasons that you provided in your introduction explaining why your topic is still controversial, after that, you are going to argue. The body paragraph following those other paragraphs explaining the reasons, you're going to provide your argumentation. You're going to argue and persuade your audience, your reader, one of the reasons that you've just explained as the most important reasons that contribute to its continued state of controversialness or of controversy. Okay, and you are going to provide evidence and support for your argument and promotion of that one particular reason as being the most significant one. Right, so, and then you can end it with your conclusion, and your conclusion should wrap it all up and leave your reader with some final insight into your controversy. So throughout your body, you are going to provide sources. You are going to provide citations from your sources, 7 to 10 sources, as your supporting evidence. Okay, so secondary sources, citations from secondary sources will serve as one of your as one of the main sources of support that you can have for the research paper. So make sure that you have at least 2 citations, okay, in each of your body paragraphs. But that doesn't mean that you have to stick with that. Perhaps, in one of your body paragraph, you might have more than 2 citations. You may have 3 if it is a substantial supporting paragraph. And in one paragraph, you just might have 1 citation. So you can work it out, however you need to in order to develop a strong research paper. Okay, but make sure that each body paragraph cite at least 1 source. Okay, because this is a research paper and you must meet this requirement of this required number of sources. All right, so that's option number 1. Let's look at option number 2. Okay, option number 2 asks you to provide a literature review of a specific kind of text or topic. Okay, now you may ask, what is a literature review? A literature review gives a brief history or overview of scholarship or professional writings or important writings on your specific topic. And it only highlights the most significant contributions to the development and advancement of your topic. So literature in this case means writing, and literature in this case means important writings or major writings of your topic, and review means just overview. All right, so if you're going with this option, you do not have to your topic does not have to be the same one as your cause and effect essay and or your persuasive essay. You can choose a brand new topic, or you can choose one of the older topics that you've used for your cause and effect essay and persuasive essay. So you can choose a brand new one, or you can choose one that you've written for your cause and effect and or your persuasive essay. Right now, that's not the same thing as saying that you're turning in, the same essay. You may use the same topic, but you are going to present the information in a different light, in a different mode, with a different purpose. All right, so the first thing to do is to pick your topic, and just know that the objective of this option is to give an overview of the major important writings that were published on this that were published or have been published on this topic. Right, and these major important writings, the reason that they're considered major important because they're influential in shaping our understanding of the topic. They contribute to our knowledge, to our growing knowledge about the topic, okay, and they influence our perception of the topic. So that's how they are major, and that's how they are viewed as important. Okay, so give an overview of those writings. Okay. Again, the number of sources required for this option are still the same, 7 to 10. Okay. So here is how you can structure your essay. Your this type of research paper. You are going to have, so your research paper will have 3 major components. Okay, of course you're going to have your introduction. After your introduction, the body component of your research paper will be the place where you will give an overview, where you will give the literature review, which is an overview of the major writings published on your topic, and then you're going to have your conclusion. All right, so in the introduction, in the introductory paragraph, you will give context, background information. Of course, you will introduce your topic, so you will make clear to your reader, what your topic is, and then you're going to provide background information about your topic and context, and then you're going to give an overview of the critical analysis of all of your text. Okay, sorry. Let me back up here. Okay, make sure that you read, even though I am skipping over all of these, okay, it is your responsibility to read the entire explanation of this option. Okay, but let me go here, and of course remember the 20% rule. All right, so I've talked about how you have to introduce your topic and all of that in the introductory paragraph, and of course you're going to have a thesis statement, and your thesis statement is going to give an overview of your critical analysis of all of the text or all of the writings that you are going to review in this research paper. So, but let's back up a little bit. And let's talk about what it is that you're doing when you are providing a literature review. Okay. First of all, when you are reviewing a specific major writing on a topic, be it, a book, an article, or whatever, or, a study experiment published on a topic, you are really first, you have to summarize the writing. Okay, in your summary, you are going to give your reader an overview of the writing's major ideas about your topic. Okay, as well as the writing's thesis about your topic. What is it arguing about your topic, and what are its major points about the topic? So your summary of each of your writing, of each of your source, will contain, of course, you have to introduce your source. So you will provide, your introduction will provide the writer's name or the author's name, the title of the text, and a sufficient and effective summary highlighting the source's major points, ideas, or findings, or contributions to your topic. So basically, if you are going with this option, okay, you will find 7 to 10 sources or writings on your topic, but these writings have to be important and have to be major and have to contribute significantly to the understanding of your topic. Okay, then what you do next is that for each of these sources, 7 to 10 sources or major writings on your topic, you are going to summarize that source or that writing, and then you are going to evaluate your source. So summary is easy. Summary, you have to, tell me what is the source, who is the author, what is the name, and what is the source's thesis on the issue, on your topic, and what are the major points, findings or contributions, what are the major ideas of the source. So your summary will capture all of these major points, and then you are going to evaluate each of your source after you've summarized it. Okay, so your evaluation will pretty much your evaluation of the text or the source or the writing, whatever you want to call it, is going to critically analyze the source. You're going to analyze the source, and you are going to evaluate the source in terms of its strengths and weakness, what it does well, what it does not do well, what are some of its short-sightedness, and so forth. And you're going to ask questions about how is it influential, how does it help to shape our understanding of this of the topic, and all of that. So some questions that you can use to kind of help guide your critical analysis or evaluation of your source is of each of your source of these questions. What effect does the source have on the field understanding of the topic? What unanswered questions does it have to shed light on? What myths or presumptions or prejudice did it have to debunk or dispel? How did it make the topic to be viewed differently? What challenges or implications did it pose? What breakthrough does it accomplish? How does it reshape, inform, or pave the way for future research? How did it build on previous research or knowledge? Okay, so answer all of these questions. So if you answer these questions in your critical analysis or evaluation, then you will have evaluated each of your source, the right way. Okay. All right. So I've talked about the introduction. Okay, I talk about how you need to have a thesis statement, and your thesis statement for this type of research paper will give an overall an overview of your critical analysis of all the sources that you will be reviewing for your topic. Okay, so what that means is that your thesis statement for this research paper will sound something like, for example, you may say that, um, most most writings on or most experts of child abuse, for example, agree that um, generally generally agree that children who grow that abuse children um, tend to perpetuate the abuse cycle when they grow up if they're not if they don't have the proper guidance or something like that. Okay, so your thesis statement has to give an overview of, of your sources in terms of, their similarities or their differences. Okay, what do all of the sources that you've looked at for your topic have in common, right? And if they do differ, right, why do they differ? So your thesis statement should capture these main similarities that are shared or commonalities that are shared among all of your sources. And if they do differ, those differences, I'm sure, are important. What are those differences? So you need to express and capture all of these in your thesis statement, right? So which will, give your which will be viewed as your overview of your 7 to 10 sources or writings that you've chosen to review for your topic for this research paper. All right, so that's the introduction. Now, in the body part, you will provide the literature, you will provide the actual literature review. So this is how you should structure the literature review following the introduction. Each of your source should be reviewed, should be summarized and evaluated, in its own paragraph. Okay, the first paragraph will review the first source. The second paragraph will review the second source. The third body paragraph will review the third source, and so forth. So for example, if you have 7 sources or 7 writings that you've chosen to highlight or to review or to summarize and evaluate for your topic, then it goes without saying that you will have 7 body paragraphs because each of your 7 sources needs to be reviewed in its own paragraph, if that makes sense. All right. Okay, so here is how you need to structure each of those body paragraphs. The first part of each of your paragraph will provide the summary of the source. So you will start out by giving the source as its publication information such as the author's name, the text title, and then you're going to summarize the source's thesis and um, and highlight all of the the major ideas conveyed in the source. The second half of the body paragraph, you are going to evaluate that source after you've summarized it. Okay, so your evaluation will discuss these concerns about your source. Okay, so is that clear? Now, after your introductory paragraph comes the literature review. The literature review is going to be structured according to your source. So each body paragraph following your introductory paragraph will be on one source. So if you have 7 sources, and you need to have at least 7 sources, okay, then you're going to have 7 body paragraphs. Okay, each of your body paragraph will have 2 major parts. The first part, you will summarize your source. The second part of the body paragraph, you'll evaluate the source. Okay, and then you're going to have a conclusion. So that is my suggested structure for you, and I do have a sample essay here that we're going to examine quickly to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like in practice, of what the structure looks like in practice. Give me just 1 second here. All right. Okay, so you have the introduction, okay, which gives, an overview of the issue, some background information, and then it ends with the thesis statement. The thesis statement is, though intended to improve academic performance, standardized tests have limited many to becoming holes for memorization instead of retainable useful knowledge. So all of her sources, all of her writings on this topic about standardized testing seem to agree that they all produce the same kind of result, and this result is not really productive to actual cognitive development or intellectual development of students. All right. So following her introductory paragraph, she has body paragraphs that discuss each of her major writing or each of her source. Okay, she starts out with, of course, the first part of the body paragraph is the summary of that source. Okay, she starts out by introducing what the source is, right, and the author. Can you hear us? And this really should be in quotation marks. And then she gives the author's name, okay? And then she gives a summary of what the source does, and then the evaluation of the source comes after the summary. The evaluation begins with the information provided in this article was easily comprehensible. The study conducted provided reliable human resource and personal experience. The teachers interviewed not only mentioned the stressors, blah, blah, and then she has the in-text documentation right here. And then the next body paragraph is about the next source, the second major writing. She begins with the introduction and summary of that source. Cole is the author of that source, okay, and a brief summary of what that source does. Okay, and the evaluation occurs after the summary, and it begins with the interview showcases Africo's strong resistance to the use of standardized testing as a way to evaluate blah. Cohen presents a very biased argument by basing it with personal opinion rather than reliable fact. Okay, so here she is saying that she is evaluating the author's strength and weaknesses and their short-sightedness, their flaws, blah, blah. Okay, so this is the evaluation of that source. And the next paragraph is about the third writing or the third source. Again, it begins with the introduction of the source and a summary. It has the author's name and a summary, and then the second part is the evaluation of that source, and so forth and so on. And it continues until it's reviewed all 7 sources, and then it concludes with a conclusion paragraph that kind of wraps up the discussion. That kind of wraps up the discussion and leaves the reader with some final informed insights about the topic. Okay, so that's how you can structure this research paper if this is the one that you're choosing to do. Okay. All right, so that's your second option, and let's read about your third option. If you are going with this option, okay, you will have a chance to synthesize the skills that you've learned from writing all 3 essays, all 3 short essays, which are cause and effect, persuasive, and literary analysis. Okay, so if you're a literary minded kind of person and you don't want to write about these other real world issues or controversies, then you can certainly do your research paper on a literary text. Okay, but by choosing this option, but notice that the direction says that with this option you get to do your text or your topic will be a literary text, but you will synthesize the skills that you've developed and learned and demonstrated in the cause and effect essays, the persuasive essays, and the literary analysis essay. Your research paper, or this option, will be composed of elements drawn from the principles of all three essays. Okay, so what is it that you'll be doing for this research paper? You will select a short story of your choice, and remember, the short story will not be any of the ones that you will be writing for your that you've written or will be writing for your literary analysis essay. Okay, so you have to choose a different one that we did not discuss in the class, that was not given as one of the options for your literary analysis essay. That's very important. So what this does is that it gives you the chance to go out and explore the different, literary texts out there, different short stories, poems, or novels out there that we did not do or discuss or read in this class. Okay, so you get to do that. And once you've chosen your literary text, you will run it by me so that I can approve it. Okay, and then what you do is you will choose, just like your literary analysis essay, you will choose to analyze one literary element of your text, of the short story. Okay, I'm sorry. It does say that you're going to choose a short story, because earlier I said that you can choose a poem, a novel, or another short story, but it will be a short story, not poem or novel. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I pick a short story that was not assigned, we did not discuss or read in this class. Make sure you run it by me so that I can make sure that it's appropriate. And then after that, and once you have my approval, you will read the short story again, but very closely again this time, and you will decide on what aspect or element of the short story you're going to focus on, and you're going to analyze your chosen aspect, focus, or element. But in your analysis, you will consider what caused, drive, and or sustain the element, and what effect it has on other elements in the story. And then you will argue and persuade for what you believe to be the most significant cause of your element's being, and the most far-reaching effect of your element on some aspect of the short story. Okay, that may be confusing, but let's recap that. So you analyze one aspect or element of your short story, and in your research paper, you will discuss, what cause or what drive or what motivates that element in the story. Where does it come about? Where does it get its energy from? How is it sustained? How is it motivated? How is it sustained throughout the story? What effects does your element have on other elements in the story? And finally, you will argue and persuade for what you believe to be the most significant cause or factor for your element's being, or significance, and the most far-reaching effect, okay, of your element on some aspects of the story or some other aspects of your story. So for example, you may choose to analyze a character in your story. Okay, so if you're analyzing this element, one major character in the story, questions that you may want to consider are, what caused your character to act or behave a certain way? For example, why do they desire what they desire, or do what they do, or believe what they believe? Right? So this will explain or satisfy the causal requirement, the causal analysis. And you also examine, why do they behave what they behave? Why do they act this way? Why do they like what they like? Why do they desire what they desire, and so forth. And you will also analyze what effects their behavior, their desire, or their belief have on their surrounding, have in their world as depicted in the story, or the effects of their desires, motives, or behavior or beliefs on other characters in the story. Okay, and then you are going to argue and persuade in favor of one of. All right, so I'm sorry, I had to pause a little bit. Okay, so the last thing that I mentioned was let me see. Okay, so after you've explained what motivates your character, for example, and you've analyzed the effect that their behavior, the desire and or belief or etc. have in the story, have on other elements in the story or other characters, you will argue and persuade um, in favor of one of let's see, of one of the the causes that you provided as, you know, the reasons for your character's being or behavior or belief or whatever. Okay, and then you will also persuade one, argue and persuade in favor of one of the most far-reaching effect of all the effects that you've analyzed um, in terms of your readers, your characters' effects on other elements or characters in the story. So anyway, your your argument will consist. Your argument and persuasion will consist of your arguing in one favor or promoting in one promoting one major cause for your character's being or action or desire, and you will also argue in favor of what you think is the most far-reaching effect of all the effects that you believe your character's action and behavior has on the rest of the characters or on the story. You will argue which one of those effects is the most far-reaching effect, the most significant effect. Okay, so that's what the argumentation and persuasion is for. Another example would be if your element for analysis is one type of conflict evident in the story, then questions that you may want to answer are where from where or what does the conflict emerge? So this will ask about the origin of the conflict. How does the conflict come about? What caused the conflict? What brings it? What causes the conflict, or what brings it into the picture? What makes it emerge? Okay. So this is the questions about provenance or origin, which goes back to cause. Okay. So once you've analyzed, you know, the origin or the causes that of the conflict, how it emerged, where it emerged, and so forth. Okay, you are going to also analyze what caused it to continue, what caused it to perpetuate, to persist, and what effect does the conflict have on the surrounding, on other characters or other elements, or the outcome, the resolution of the overall story, if any. Okay, and finally, you will argue and persuade in favor of one of those causes of the conflict and one of the effects of the conflict as being the most significant cause and the most far-reaching the most far-reaching effect. Okay, so the structure are the same. So regardless of which literary element you choose, okay, you have to structure your research, your paper in that way, right? In that you start out by explaining, you know, the cause and then the effects, and then you are going to argue in favor of one of those causes as being the most important one, and you're going to argue and persuade one of those effects as being the most far-reaching effect on the rest of the story. Okay. And of course, as with the other two options, if you're going with this option, you still have to cite 7 to 10 sources. Okay. And of course, for any of the sources, know that you have to conduct your research on Galileo. So that is a requirement. Okay. And if you're going with this option, you should have no problem. You should have no problem gathering relevant academic sources. Okay. Sources. So if your short story is one that is popular or is much studied or commented upon, you should be able to find scholarly sources or scholarly articles for your short story, and there should be plenty of them. Okay. Alright, so you can do that. You still have 7 to 10 sources. The minimum word count is still the same as with the other two. And the questions of structuring it, you can structure your this type of research paper. Of course, you still gotta have your your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. Your introduction, in your introductory, you should give the name of the writer, the name of the author of the short story, the name of the short story. Give a brief summary of the short story in your introduction. Okay, very brief summary, what is it about, who's involved, and all of that. Then after you give your brief summary, then you should make it clear which of the element, which of the specific element of the short story you will be focusing on in this research paper. So for example, if you will be analyzing a specific character, it needs to be made clear after you've given the summary of the short story in the introduction. So in the introductory paragraph, after you give your after you summarize the short story, make it clear which of the element you will be focusing on. Okay, and talk and give some background information, just about the short story, explaining the character significance and why it matters. For example, why this element warrants a closer look. Okay, then of course after that you're going to give your thesis statement, and your thesis statement is going to give an overview of the character's origin, or what causes them to be like that, and their influence on the rest of the story, which would satisfy the effects requirement. Okay, so your thesis statement should kind of give an overview of the causes of your element and the effects that your element has on the rest of the story. Just an overview. Do not go into details about these causes and effects. Leave that for the body component. Then after your introductory paragraph is your comes your body. Now the first body you can explore, you can develop and support in details. You can illustrate one of the causes, explaining, for example, your character's behavior in action. Your second body paragraph can explain the second cause, develop and support the second cause using specific textual evidence, meaning specific details from the short story to support your explanation about what caused them and so forth. Okay, so make sure that for this research paper, textual evidence, which are specific details from the short story, is going to serve as a major type of evidential support that you can have. Okay, so one of the sources will be, so one of your 7 required sources can be the actual short story itself, because you're going to have to cite from it to provide specific details from the short story at different points in your research paper to support what you're saying. Alright, so if you have 3 causes that explain, for example, your character's desire, motive, beliefs, or behavior, then each of those causes should be developed and supported in its own paragraph. And after that, say if you have 2 causes, then you're going to have 2 causal analysis body paragraphs. So after you've explained each of the causes in its own paragraph, or analyze the cause in its own paragraph, the next paragraph you will explain the effects. Now you can draw out the effects if you can analyze 2 or 3. If you have 2 or 3 effects to analyze, then you can choose to analyze each of those effects in its own paragraph, or you can explain all of the, for example, 2 or 3 effects in one single paragraph. It's up to you. Okay, so if you're explaining, so you can offer or analyze 3 effects that your element has on the rest of the story, or on other elements in the story. You can develop it. You can explain all of those effects, illustrate all of those effects in one single paragraph. Okay, then after that, the next paragraph should be the one paragraph where you're going to argue and persuade in favor of one cause and one effect that is the most far-reaching effect. All right, and then after that, you're going to have your conclusion. But of course, throughout the body, you are going to have citations from your source in each of your body paragraph. Okay, that kind of criteria is the same with all of these other options. Okay, so let's recap about the structure of this research paper, of this option. Okay, you're going to have your introductory paragraph that will give your the writer's name, the short story's title, a brief summary of the short story, a clarification or an expression of the one element that you're going to analyze, that you're going to focus on, and your thesis statement, which will give an overview of, what caused what caused your element, what caused your element, and what effects your element has on the rest of the story. Okay, that's all in the introductory paragraph. Then after that, in the body, you're going to have you're going to illustrate each of your causes in its own body paragraph. So if you have two causes, then you're going to have two body paragraphs. Then the first two body paragraphs will explain each of those causes, and then the next body paragraph will explain the effects that your element has on the rest of the story, all of the effects that you want to discuss that are important on the rest of the story. And then the body paragraph that comes after that will argue and persuade in favor of one cause that you've already explained, that you believe is the most important cause for your element. And then you're also going to argue in favor of one effect that you think is the most far-reaching effect and why. Okay, and then you're going to have a conclusion paragraph. And then, of course, with all of these research papers, you must have a works cited page. If you do not have a works cited page, points will be deducted. And your works cited page should provide full documentation of all the sources that you've cited in your research paper. So your works cited page should not contain any source that does not have a corresponding in-text citation in your research paper. And likewise, for every single source that you cite in your research paper, I must find a corresponding full documentation of that same source in your works cited page. Okay, so the gist of what I'm saying is that your sources must match up. All right, from your research paper and in your works cited page. So all the sources that you cite should be reflected in the works cited page and vice versa. Okay. All right, so that's all that I have for this assignment. Let's go back to module 3 because it is such an important assignment, the research paper, because it is worth 20% of your final grade. Make sure that you do not plagiarize. Make sure that you follow all guidelines and directions provided for the research paper, and also make sure you visit the general guidelines for course compositions. And also, I want to hear from you regarding your research paper. Okay, I want to see your proposal for the research paper because I want to know ahead what you are working on. Okay, so your research proposal, please do not attach, or please answer all of these questions for the proposal directly in the text box of this discussion board. So you do not have to type in a Microsoft Word and attach that file to the research paper proposal board. You can just directly, answer your questions in the text box provided by the board for you. Okay, that way it's easier for me and it's quicker for me to go through these proposals. Because if you attach a file, then it takes me a while to open up the file and then to close the file and then to go back to the board. So it takes time, and I am doing everything that I can to give myself as much time as I can because I do have many classes and many assignments to grade and go through. Okay, and the research paper Dropbox is here. All right. So like I said, you need to be working on your research paper weeks prior to the deadline of the paper, because it is a very time-consuming project, and the researching is going to be one of the most time-consuming stage stages of this paper, and of course the writing of the research paper is going to be challenging as well. Okay, but that component, the the writing stage is going to depend heavily on the researching stage. Okay, and of course it also depends on how well you keep track of your sources, and the quality of your sources as well, and as all of that. So all of these concerns, um, you were made aware of when you read chapters 24 and 25 in preparation for the research and writing quiz, or QEP, if it comes to that. All right, so please email me if you have any questions as you're working through this research paper project, and I will endeavor to answer all of your questions and all of your concerns. But the main thing that you need to keep in mind is that you need to give yourself and me enough time to address your specific concerns.